This is a really important case for the National Crime Agency, and in July 2018 we were working with our partners, in particular UK Border Force and their cutter fleet, along with the National Maritime Intelligence Centre in the UK, and also with the Maritime Analysis and Operations Centre Narcotics based in Lisbon. And we were leading the operation with those other organisations to coordinate the interception against this vessel, this yacht. And the vessel was brought back into UK harbour, where we recovered from it 2.1 tonnes of cocaine. And it was extremely high purity cocaine, bundled up in different consignments with different coloured wrappers on it, so obviously ready to be further distributed when it was landed. We assessed that the 2.1 tonnes of cocaine on this boat was coming into Europe, and we think it would have then been distributed, moved around, and a proportion of that would have ended up coming into the UK and causing harm in our communities in this country. Important to point out, this is a significant interception, and whilst we're not purely focused on the commodity, on the drugs, I should say that it's the largest ever seizure of cocaine from a sailing yacht by the UK authorities. And actually the 2.1 tonnes of drugs, if that was cut down and then supplied into markets and on the street, the retail value of that would be £133 million. So that begins to show the level of this operation, how high up they're operating in terms of global organised crime networks. And I also want to point out that actually inside the UK, in our communities, we know there is a real challenge with the violence and exploitation that takes place in the criminal drugs market. People will have heard of the county lines phenomenon, where drugs are moved from major cities into market towns and rural areas, and there's a great deal of exploitation of young people and vulnerable people, use of violence, use of guns, and other weapons. And it's important to remember, I think, that sort of activity can only happen if at the very top level we've got people bringing in large consignments. And that's why it's so important that the National Crime Agency targets the organised crime networks that sit behind this, and that we disrupt them. And certainly in this case, we're confident that having removed those drugs from their possession, we've disrupted this particular supply chain, and we will have absolutely hit the crime network behind this in the pocket. So this was a really complex investigation and an operation. And what we've seen here is that actually the drug traffickers that have done this, took steps to try and make it difficult for us. So for example, when we've forensically examined the vessel and the equipment that's on board, we know that they use navigation equipment that would make it difficult for them to be seen by other vessels on the seas. They used coded communication methods, and we also know that there were some forensic bodysuits on board the vessel. We would make the assumption that was to avoid leaving forensic traces on the drugs. But it's really important to say, despite the complexities of that and the fact that these traffickers have tried to make it difficult, ultimately in this case, the National Crime Agency, working with our partners, we have been in a position to identify, locate, intervene on this vessel, recover the drugs, and arrest the people on board.